about 7 or 8 years ago, the circuit court in the county where I work developed the peacemaking court.
Mm,
They developed a specialty court that was infused and aligned with the values and philosophies of peacemaking. And that changed the game for me completely. So the indigenous people from northern Michigan, the tribe Little River Band of Ottawa Indians, came to our area and they sat with us for about 7 days total. And they shared with us what they do to address conflict. They talked about their history and harm, relationships, and community. Um, and what I learn and what I speak about in the book is the absence of that approach as we take care of our children. Conflict resolution, especially for children, but I could say this for lots of different groups of people, it's not just, teaching, learning a lesson because you made a bad choice. It's really an opportunity to not only teach, but to also nurture. And I believe that schools are a part of a community. Everybody knows how to get to their elementary school, right? Because they are intentionally positioned within communities. And if that is true, then it's the community's presence that helps to nurture that child or those children through the conflict. So not only do they learn the lesson of what they did or how to make it right, but they learn so many other lessons around humanity and support. When we push kids away through the suspension tactic, we really exclude them
mhm.
and we cut off that ability to learn. When we keep them in school and we surround them with people who care about, who truly care and who truly love them, who are invested in them and in their future, their community, we begin to nurture them just by keeping them included. We begin to see that they have an unmet need as well. What I know as a practitioner in dispute resolution, be it mediation, restorative work, or peacemaking, is that more often than not, if not, and maybe 100% of the time, people who initiate conflict have an unmet need themselves. Um,
Hurt
I,
people.
exactly. I was
Mhm.
gonna try to remember those words. In the social work arena, that's what you hear: hurt people, and that is true in dispute resolution. Academically, that is an interdisciplinary academic curriculum, and we borrow from social work, human resources, political science, everything, to create this path of helping people resolve their disputes. Um, and I did not see that happening in schools. I think schools, um, educators have to wear multiple hats. I know that, I understand that, but they are very insular in that they're not reaching out to the community or engaging the community or including the community in the work that they want to accomplish with kids. But just to educate them, I understand that. We want them to graduate, we want them to go to postgraduate, whatever, work, school, trades, whatever. But in that process, which is what the indigenous peoples believe, and being an African American, I believe this too, that it does take a village to raise a child. And if that is true, and so many of us nod at that, we agree to that, then why won't we let the village inside the school?
Mm,
It puzzles me. Um, and so in my chapter, when I talk about the community, that is a critical piece that is missing. And therefore, the programs that I've attempted to launch 12 years ago didn't last long because of that missing piece.
yeah. How did that what was the can you share like some of the breakdown that happened because of the lack of community buy-in?
Yeah. So I don't know that it was a lack of community buy-in. I think
Right.
it was a lack of community engagement. I will say
Mm,
that.
mm,
There's a relationship, and and in this work, as you know, that relationships are so important. So we had a program, and I talk about this in the chapter. I won't identify the school, but
Sure.
we had a program where the first year, I asked the school leadership, the district leadership, to give 3 years, dedicate 3 consecutive years to building this program, and you will get the shift that you want in climate. Very often, administrative people, and in my experience, they wanted a magic wand. They wanted us to come in and fix these bad kids. I mean, they
Hmm.
may not say that explicitly, but that's what was going on. Fix these kids, which is a crazy thought. And that is not the proposition for restorative work. So I would say, well, give us 3 years. Year one, we launched the program a few months into the school year, which means we're going to practice what we preach. We walk the talk. We're going to build relationships with the students, with the staff, with the administrators. I want my group to know where the classrooms are, go in the lunchroom, be a part of the community. That's important. We have to build trust. Students use the services. And I think we had well over 200 students to use the services that particular school year, which wasn't bad for a new program. We had community support. One of the best restaurants in our community, they have a bakery. They began to donate baked goods because we want to build community. So in our restorative room, students can come in with a problem, but we want to sit down and talk about it. And sometimes offering students um, a baked good, a brownie, a slice of cake, or whatever was helpful
Right.
in getting them to open up and feel comfortable and all of that. It wasn't a bribe, it's just how we do our business.
It's hospitality.
It's hospitality. We had community members, of maybe a half dozen from the community, who volunteered their time. So we wanted to be hospitable to them as well. So that became a complaint. We were feeding kids sugary snacks. By the end of the first school year, we had addressed more than 200 young people, probably 8 different dispute types, and I have the data in my office. We had a high settlement rate, if you will, where people worked it out. We had a high compliance rate because we follow up with the young people and make sure things were still going. And that means we might see them in a hallway and thumbs up, how's it going? And they would say, it's cool. And the complaint was, in spite of all of that, people thought we were letting the kids into our room and letting them hang out and eat sugary snacks. Okay. Year two, we went back, and things were still going well. The students were excited to see us. The students embraced us, so they were comfortable with us. We had close to 400 kids to come through this room. And I think the student population was like 800, 850 students in the building. So we're not talking about a 3,000 student building. So things were going well, same setup, and the complaints were the same. We didn't know what we were doing. And another complaint was we're letting them hang out in our room too long. So in other words, they're having a conflict where they're getting kicked out of class, teacher is writing them up, and you only want them to spend 15 minutes with us. It may take us 15 minutes just to kind of de-escalate, right? Before we can get them to open up and talk about what's going on. And my advocacy would say, that side of me would say, well, let us spend time on the front end of problem solving so that one, the young person can develop some skills and tactics of dealing with him or herself the next time it happens, because it will happen again. And they will have more time in school because they're not getting kicked out. And we're going to make up the time that they've spent in the office with us academically. So it's going to be a wash. And actually, we're going to see more engaging behavior from students. Um, I wasn't able to sell that. So when year 3 came about, we were not invited to come back.
Mm.
So to me, that was a failed program. It felt like a fail. I felt like a failure. It took me years to get over that because we had the data spoke to the results of it. We built relationships with these students to the point that in the summer for breaks, they will call my office to check on us. That's
Mhm.
how much they cared about us. So there was a intact relationship. We had other, a few members of the community and leaders of the community to buy into it. But within that insular system, they could not assess the value of it. And therefore, we were not invited back. Um, and I want to believe that it's hard to measure the outcomes of a restorative circle
Mhm.
beyond your written agreement because the depth of the work is so deep. I don't think systems and the way that they're designed now are able to assess that depth. It is not about how many agreements we get, it is about how we have helped nurture a student to help them decide that behavior change is worth it.
Yeah, one of the things that at Amplify RJ we frame our work around is like restorative justice practices are antidotes to white supremacy culture. And like
Mhm.
hearing you talk about what you just shared and then like reading the book, like the things that stood out to me is like, okay, so worship of the written word, you have like all of these policies that need to be followed. Like they need this many instructional hours. Like if it's not done in like this one right way, being another characteristic of white supremacy, like that's not right.
Exactly.
There's this idea of um, like make sure that like the quantity of like these things just happen, like you churn them out, like I guess like emphasizing like the product being like
Mhm.
resolutions or like agreements or
Yeah.
things being settled over like the time that it takes a person to go through a process of one de-escalation but then also like healing and processing it out. I think like there's so many things that come up, um, and I've often said that I don't believe that restorative justice belongs in schools institutionally. Like the
Mhm.
structure of school as they are, like are not conducive to that. So what do we do?